Good evening, I'm Diana Skaya. It's 8 p.m. here local time in Warsaw, and you're watching World News Tonight. Tonight, we'll be taking a closer look at the unfolding situation in Georgia, where the European Union is now calling for an investigation into reports of polling irregularities following the pro-Russian Georgian Dream party's victory in Saturday's elections. Now, more on that in just a moment, but first, let's take a look at tonight's headlines. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán comes out in support of Georgia's ruling party in the elections, despite outrage over claims the vote was rigged. No special restrictions on Ukraine using U.S. arms against North Korean troops, says the Pentagon. A lost waltz believed to have been written by Polish pianist Fryderyk Chopin has been discovered after almost 200 years. And we begin in Georgia, where the Georgian opposition is calling for a rerun of the parliamentary elections after numerous violations were documented at polling stations. Now, alongside President Salome Zurabishvili, the opposition is accusing the ruling pro-Russian Georgian Dream party of manipulating the election results. Now, pro-European factions within the country are mobilizing. They're refusing to remain passive in the face of what they describe as electoral misconduct. And the opposition's plan reflects a growing demand for transparency and fair representation in Georgia's political landscape.
This is where it all happens, the Orbán Palace in Tbilisi, the official residence of the President of the Republic. The opposition believes the President to be the only democratically elected official in Georgia following Saturday's elections, and together with the President here at the palace, the opposition is coordinating its efforts. So far, they have worked out a three-step plan, which is to reject the results of the vote, which is to investigate all of the allegations of fraud, and to organize a rerun of these elections. In Saturday's parliamentary elections in Georgia, the official results show that the Georgian Dream, the ruling party, won with 54% of the vote. The pro-European opposition coalitions each got about 10% of the vote. The opposition believes that this result simply does not represent the will of the Georgian people.
We refuse to enter the parliament. That's the first step of the plan. Then we have a coordination with the President of Georgia and with our partners in the West. So we try to call the international investigation with the help of the US and the European Union. And we will try to convince everybody that the election was not fair and not free, which will be very easy because it obviously was Russian meddling in the election process. And the final act of the plan is that we will call for a new election, free and fair election, which will be held by the new international administration.
In Saturday's elections, the Georgian opposition ran as four separate coalitions. Even though they all have different views and policies, they all vowed to cooperate and to construct a coalition government that would put Georgia back on the European tracks and introduce a series of measures that would ultimately bring Georgia closer to the European Union. Now, these coalitions are cooperating in what they believe to be the restoration and defense of Georgian democracy.
Georgia's international isolation is growing in the wake of its contested elections, with only Hungary's Viktor Orbán acknowledging the legitimacy of Saturday's vote. Now, its results also put Georgia's president in the spotlight as the last bulwark against Tbilisi's anti-democratic pro-Russian government. Our Piotr Miszczuk has more.
This isn't the welcome Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán had expected on his surprise visit to Georgia, where he met with his Georgian counterpart Irakli Kobachidze. The Hungarian official recognized the ballot, but Brussels wants a probe into election irregularities.
It is very unfortunate that Viktor Orbán took an initiative, and probably he became a certain EU face in Georgia. supporting the outcome of election and calling it free and democratic.
Though no EU official has visited Georgia, the disputed election prompted a flurry of statements, including the latest signed by 13 European Union ministers, which said that the violations of electoral integrity are a betrayal of the Georgian people's legitimate European aspirations. The election will elicit a response from the EU.
If Georgian government wants to continue relationships with the European Union, they have to somehow follow the expectations of the European Union institutions.
That we have to stop all the negotiation with Georgia to income to European Union.
But it seems that the pressure from the international community will be crucial to resolving the political crisis in Georgia, says Kakha Gogolashvili of the Georgian Foundation for Strategic and International Studies.
The idea is to conduct new elections led by or administered by international community. It could be any international organization, like, for example, Council of Europe, or it can be UN.
The future of Georgian democracy will also be in the hands of the people, who were called to protest by Georgian President Salome Zorabishvili, remaining in staunch opposition to the ruling party.
As the last independent institution in this country, I must clearly state that I do not recognize these elections. Recognizing them would be tantamount to legitimizing Russia's takeover of Georgia.
Yet the president's time is growing short. She has a mere 45 days till the end of her term, and her successor will be chosen by the Georgian parliament. Zorabishvili's political impact will stretch beyond her tenure as head of state. Right now, her options are very limited.
Now her role is more political than legal in this case, because even if she is in charge to open the first session of the parliament, if she refuses to do this, so Parliament can start working anyway.
The electoral mayhem could steer Georgia away from the West. Canada and Sweden have already suspended cooperation with the Georgian government, and more countries might follow suit. The growing isolation from the West might push the country into Russia's embrace.
Italian police are investigating alleged illegal access to state security databases by a private investigative firm. Now, 4 people have been placed under house arrest in connection with the case. The confidential data, which was allegedly sold to clients or used to blackmail businessmen and politicians, went back to at least 2019. Our Yeremi Hołodniuk reports.
Prosecutors in Italy allege that the business intelligence firm Equalize hacked into sensitive government and police databases, compiling compromising information on politicians, business leaders, and even Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. Investigators have indicated that the conspiracy spanned a wide range of individuals with ties to organized crime and foreign intelligence services.
This hacking is unacceptable. We have been saying it for a long time. Spying on people's private lives and then using the information for economic or political purposes is really a threat to democracy. Such information can be used by Russia or other foreign adversaries.
Investigators revealed that the stolen data was used for blackmail, to gain an unfair advantage in business and government, and to influence political decision-making.
Cybersecurity is a strategic concern because there's a real global war being waged. The actors behind cyber attacks are often foreign countries attempting to target critical infrastructure, not just influence politics.
The investigation follows a recent probe into a separate breach at Italian bank Intesa San Paolo that targeted Giorgia Meloni and her sister. In that case, Meloni demanded tough sentences for people found to have stolen politicians' private information.
I hope that prosecutors go all the way, because in the best of cases, behind this activity is a system of blackmail and extortion, and in the worst case, we are looking at the crime of subversion.
Both scandals have raised serious concerns about the integrity of Italy's national security and legal systems.
The Pentagon has revised its estimates of North Korean troop deployments to Russia, now saying that around 10,000 DPRK soldiers are already stationed there. Now, this escalation could prompt Washington to supply Ukraine with long-range missiles capable of targeting locations deep within Russia. Krzysztof Panek has the story.
These North Korean soldiers were filmed on a training ground in Russia, receiving Russian uniforms and weapons. Their presence there has been confirmed by US, South Korean and Ukrainian intelligence services. Now they're being moved to the Kursk region, where reports suggest they will soon enter the fight against Ukraine. It remains to be seen in what role they will be deployed.
One scenario is that they will just, stay at the border and preventing Ukraine from other attacks on Russia proper. The second variant, which is not excluded at all, is that these soldiers will participate in the war.
For months, North Korea has been supplying Russia with artillery ammunition and even short-range ballistic missiles. While it is not entirely clear what Pyongyang is getting in return, analysts have some theories.
North Korea came to Russia's assistance, and in return, North Korea would get food, financial assistance, but also, in my view, most importantly for Kim Jong-un, military assistance, particularly in terms of missile technology and satellite technology.
The war in Ukraine has become a testing ground for cutting-edge military technology. Participating in it directly would provide the North Korean military with valuable experience.
It's an opportunity for them to get combat training. I mean, the North Koreans have a huge military force, but it has never fought a war since the end of the Korean War in 1953.
In response to the deployment, South Korea is considering assisting Ukraine. The two countries' leaders spoke on Tuesday about a possible strategic partnership.
South Korea has said that they are seriously considering the potential for sending either South Korean troops or, more broadly, lethal aid and assistance to Ukraine.
A Pentagon spokesperson said that should Pyongyang's soldiers enter the war, the US would impose no new limits on arms provided to Ukraine. While this statement leaves some wiggle room, it hints at providing Kiev with long-range missiles and allowing its use against targets on Russian soil.
Now to irregular migration in Europe. The Italian government, led by Giorgia Meloni, had crafted a creative solution to process asylum seekers in Albania, but the plan was blocked by Italy's own courts. Now, our TVP World's Don Arlith traveled to the centers in Albania, which were built and will be operated by Italy, and joins us now live. Good evening, Don. So what do we know? When is Italy going to start sending asylum seekers to these centers in large numbers?
Well, that's a great question. We don't know exactly when this is going to happen. We do know that there are legal challenges that have held the whole process up. Of course, we mentioned before about the 16 asylum seekers that were sent to the facilities and then sent back to Italy because a court in Rome had ruled that had questions about the legality of this whole situation. We actually reached out earlier today to speak with Susanna Zanfrini, director of the International Rescue Committee in Italy, to get her take on some of these positions and exactly what was expected to happen there in Italy. Well, let's go ahead and listen to what she told us.
The Italian government has adopted a decree to reissue the number of safe third countries, not for the repatriation from Albania, but for having a legal basis to process these people in Albania and not being forced by judicial powers to transfer these people to Italy, which is what happened 10 days ago. So they have revised the list of safe third countries, and they are hoping that with the next vote, it will not be possible for the judge that needs to validate the stay in Albania. It will not be possible to overrule.
Don, let me ask you this. What do Albanians think of this deal with Italy to house asylum seekers?
Well, that's also a good question. We asked a lot of people what their thoughts were, and the answers ranged from largely disconcerted, and then actually when we were at the cities where these two the locations where these two, one a village and another a port city where the centers are located, actually residents in the second city of Jadar, they were saying that they were actually encouraged to have such a center because it brought a lot of jobs to their village of 500 people. They also learned that these facilities would be built there through the media, actually, so they weren't consulted by the Albanian government at all. Another thing that is fresh in people's minds is the way that Italy treated Albanians when the communist regime collapsed here in 1992, and tens of thousands of Albanians were actually fleeing from the country and going to Italy. Italy was kind and gracious enough to accept them then, so this is kind of returning the favor, if you will. Now back to you.
Thank you so much, Don, reporting to us live from Albania about the tents that are set up. The commission investigating Russian and Belarusian influence in Poland is set to present its first report on Wednesday. Now, the document is believed to be an account of actions undertaken by former Polish Defense Minister Antoni Macierewicz and other officials. Prime Minister Donald Tusk said that the report contains some, quote, strong statements.
There are some strong statements and strong findings in this document. Tomorrow, General Stróżek and members of the Commission will present in detail the results of the Commission's work so far. Some of the phrases that stuck out for me from today's summary of the report, and they will also definitely be explained in detail during tomorrow's presentation, are Macierewicz, Prosecutor's Office, and treason.
Now, the announcement coincides with the release of another report on Macierewicz's ties to Russia. Now, last week, Poland's Ministry of Defense said the Smolensk subcommittee headed by Antoni Macierewicz had spared no effort in proving false claims that the presidential plane crashed as a result of an assassination attempt. Now, the subcommittee experts also rejected any evidence whatsoever that would challenge that theory. Additionally, Macierewicz is believed to have been in contact with a Russian citizen who gave him a memory stick containing interesting information on the crash of the presidential airplane in Smolensk, Russia. Now, Poland's counterintelligence only learned about the meeting a few days after. The European Commission has denied Poland's request to exclude the country's defense spending from its financial reports to the EU. Poland and 6 other countries are subject to the excessive deficit procedure, an EU mechanism for member states which have a GDP deficit higher than 3%. And now, while Warsaw's request was denied on Monday, experts predict Poland should meet the EU's requirements in the next few years. Our Kazimierz Wysiak has this next report.
With the war in Ukraine happening just beyond Poland's borders, Poland is spending the highest GDP percentage on defense, not only in the EU, but also in all of NATO, more than 4%. That's why the Polish finance minister has tried to convince the EU to not include his country's defense expenditure in the excessive deficit procedure. But now it's clear that this won't be the case.
I can confirm that our defense spending won't be excluded from the excessive deficit procedure.
The excessive deficit procedure is a mechanism aimed at ensuring that individual EU member states won't fall too far behind other nations when it comes to their finances. It can be launched when a member state has a GDP deficit higher than 3% or its government debt exceeds 60%. Poland's deficit of the public finance sector is currently at approximately 5.1% of GDP. In early October, the Polish government presented its plan for lowering the deficit to 2.9% in the next 4 years. According to analysts, this plan is by all means achievable, thanks to overly pessimistic estimates by the European Commission.
We will just grow much faster than the European Commission expects us to grow. So all in all, this quicker growth, nominal freezing of personal income tax, and possibly some other fiscal measures This shall be really enough to make this tightening of 0.8% of GDP yearly.
Poland ended up well above the 3% deficit threshold during the term of the previous conservative Law and Justice Party. While the current administration has to deal with the aftermath of this breach, the excessive deficit procedure doesn't have any immediate negative consequences for Warsaw. The European Commission will provide Poland and 6 other member states, including France, Belgium and Italy, with its own suggestions on how to decrease their deficit in November.
Roughly 200 years after its creation, a piece of music believed to have been written by Fryderyk Chopin has been discovered in New York. Now, while some are confident that the style of music is authentic to Chopin, others have doubts regarding its authenticity. Sonia Agata-Biszczan reports.
Discovering original manuscripts by the Polish composer Fryderyk Chopin is exceptionally rare, but Robinson McClellan, curator at the New York Morgan Library and Museum, believes he has done just that. As reported by the New York Times, the A minor waltz, consisting of 48 measures and lasting roughly 80 seconds, is believed to have been composed between 1830 and 1835, when Chopin was in his early 20s. Both the manuscript and the composition exhibit a number of features characteristic of Chopin's work.
Well, the kind of writing gesture in the notes seems quite correct. The kind of paper used, also the color of the ink, brownish, which he used very often. The music is Chopinesque, I would say. It sounds very much like Chopin, but not Chopin enough. I don't know how to put it. His music was always so very refined, so complicated in a good way.
Following a thorough examination of the manuscript, the Morgan Library determined the waltz to be an authentic piece by the legendary composer. The piece has also been recorded by the renowned pianist Lang, who referred to it as one of the most authentic Chopin styles that you can imagine. But the Fryderyk Chopin Institute demonstrated restraint in confirming its authenticity.
Well, we have to be extra careful because a new manuscript and a new piece by Fryderyk Chopin would make us absolutely happy, elated, in fact. But well, we need research, and it doesn't look like a complete piece, more like a musical gesture. Something, if he did it, he just sketched it, but it's not a complete musical thought the way we know Chopin would write it.
Regardless of the originality of this very waltz, it is sure to have revived enthusiasm among aficionados of Chopin's music.
Ongoing turmoil in Georgia as the country's pro-European opposition believes that Saturday's parliamentary elections were stolen by the ruling pro-Russian party, leading to the European Union demanding an investigation into reports of electoral violations. Now, on Monday night, Georgians protested the results of the election, which they claim was rigged. And to discuss what will happen to Georgia next, I'm joined by Elena Kintsurashvili, Program Coordinator at the German Marshall Fund East. Thank you so much for being with us here on TVP World this evening. 13 EU ministers have demanded an impartial inquiry into the alleged rigged election results. Can you outline the specific steps that this investigation may take?
Definitely. This is also something that has been requested by the president, Salome Zurabishvili, as well as the pro-European opposition parties. So the idea is that local election observation watchdogs, they are right now working on the final report. And as soon as they have the official report reflecting on all the violations that took place, not only on the day of the elections, however, in the run-up to the elections as well, they will present these to the international observer missions that were deployed to Georgia, such as IRI, NDI, OSCE, and afterwards, based on the international observation mission's final report that will hopefully indeed say that the elections were stolen from Georgian people and the nature of them were neither free nor fair, we will have another new elections that will be administered by international observers.
And say if elections or if snap elections are not called, what could the future of Georgia hold? What will be next for Georgia?
In that case, we are looking at a very grave scenario in which Georgia will be definitely lost. And in a broader context where we will not be only losing Georgia and the European future of Georgian people, however, EU's neighborhood of South Caucasus, which is quite turbulent for the time being. Georgia's neighbors being Armenia and Azerbaijan were one of the first ones to actually congratulate Georgian Dream on the victory. And this is a very, very saddened sad situation in which we would be having the whole entire region once again under the influence of Kremlin. And this is, of course, viewed as a very big victory for the leadership in Moscow.
And what about Turkey?
Turkey as well. Turkey's victorious congratulations towards Georgian Dream came in today. In the list we also have Hungary. Prime Minister Viktor Orbán is actually in Georgia as we speak. He was the first European leader to congratulate on a stellar victory to Georgian Dream. And then Georgian Dream was such in a rush to get legitimation from Europe that actually the Prime Minister of Georgia was the one to extend invitation to Hungary's Prime Minister Orbán to visit Georgia for 2 days and basically, congratulate and legitimize the government that stole elections from the Georgian people.
Let's focus on these elections for a moment, particularly with the protests. Do you think that these demonstrators would be able to significantly shift the current situation?
So I think the way it should work moving forward is that the ball in the court of Georgians, but the ball is in the court of our international partners as well. Locally, what Georgians can do is that definitely take to the streets to protest, to showcase to the international community that there is a will and there is a strong desire for a transition of the power, that the elections were in fact stolen from them. And then on the side of the international partners of Georgia, what we need to see is a very clear messaging, a very strong one. We don't need any more vague statements made that the elections might not have been free and fair. We need a strong statement saying that indeed our international partners are seeing all the violations and manipulation that took place in the run-up to the elections as well as on the day of the elections, and they do stand in the fight for freedom and European future with the Georgian community. And to be honest, only this will not be enough neither. So other set of actions that the international community can take in order to help Georgian people is to immediately impose sanctions, financial sanctions, as well as travel bans, and to freeze assets of Georgian Dream members as well as other enablers.
This is something, that could happen if snap elections don't take place. Again, I assume this is what would happen. Given the rising protests, how is Georgian Dream likely to respond domestically to this situation unfolding?
Unfortunately, there is a fear that there will be an extent of violence to crack down the peaceful protests by the side of the Georgian Dream. This is nothing new. We have already seen it. We witnessed it earlier this year when there were widespread protests in Tbilisi for a number of days after Georgian Dream initiated a bouquet of Russian-style laws. People were beaten up, people were threatened. There is a fear-based narrative that Georgian Dream is spreading over and over again. So definitely there is a fear that the protests are not going to be as peaceful as they are now.
Could we see a shift in their approach to political opposition and civil liberties in Georgia?
From the side of the Georgian
Yes.
Dream, definitely. Just today, a couple of hours ago, the Central Election Commission that is controlled by Georgian Dream, for example, urged the Georgian Prosecutor Office to start an investigation against the president, the opposition, as well as other interested parties who have been speaking up, saying that the elections were rigged. The Central Election Commission, as well as the Georgian Dream, believe that there is no justification to these statements and that elections were absolutely free and fair.
And just very briefly, because we're almost out of time, what are the potential impacts of Georgian Dream's continued power on Georgia's NATO and European Union aspirations?
Well, basically, we can say goodbye to Georgia's European and NATO aspirations. This is very sad because it's part of Georgia's constitution. Under Article 78, all the constitutional bodies of Georgia are supposed to do everything that is in their power to ensure such integration. However, this whole year, as well as in the years leading to 2024, we've been witnessing Georgian Dream doing everything in their power to actually jeopardize this. European Union is very clear. They already froze Georgia's accession process into the European Union. There are also talks that if Georgian Dream stays in power, the visa liberalization that Georgian people are using on a daily basis, this as well will be frozen. From the side of the US and other European capitals, they are also freezing financial cooperation and assistance to Georgia. So it will be a very grave picture in which probably Georgia will resemble something like Belarus under Lukashenko's authoritarian rule.
And the situation is really rapidly evolving, only to see what will take place in the days and weeks to come.
Definitely.
Thank you so much, Elene Kintsurashvili, Program Coordinator, German Marshall Fund East, for being with us here on World News Tonight on TVP World.
Thank you for having me.
And that's all for this edition of World News Tonight. Thanks for watching. I'm Diana Skaya. Have a good night.